Hey everybody, I'm Alex at Reach and Reverie. Welcome to the week 1 garden tour for 2021. So come on in, let me introduce you to everything that's growing here this week. I'm gonna start with this garden bed back here and we'll work our way around. Now you may notice I have not labeled anything. I would recommend, if you are planting a lot of different varieties of things, to go ahead and label. That way you know throughout the season what is growing where. Now, as I did plant everything in this garden, I was recording myself, so I do know what varieties are where, and if I forget, I can look back on those videos and double check myself. So in the back, we have tomatoes. I have the Blue Beauty. I grew this last year and I love the Blue Beauty tomato. I always recommend anybody who wants to grow some really cool tomatoes to try the Blue Beauty. We have the Paul Robeson right here, large barred boar, Costaludo Fiorentino. This is the White Beauty or the Snowball tomato. We have Get Stuffed, and then Crimson Cushion. In this garden bed, I also have 5 of the Little Fingers eggplants. There's 2 more over here. And then in this space, I planted summer squash. I do have one that's doing really good. This is either Ronde Denise or the Pattison Panache Jaune et Vert. Now these I didn't label because I wanted to surprise myself. I knew that I was putting 2 varieties in this space, and I didn't want to be too linear when I said put one here, one here, one here, one here. So I knew I spaced them in a row, and I got 4 seeds, 2 of each variety, and I just randomly sowed them so that it would be a kind of a neat surprise as they come up to see which fruit starts growing on them. So Ronde Denise, it's shaped like a pumpkin, but it's like a zucchini type squash. It's a summer squash. It grows in like a bush sized plant, and so these are either that or the Pattison Panache Jaune et Vert, which is like a patty pan yellow and green striped squash. I'm excited about this. Now, out of the 4 locations where I sowed seeds, I did get germination on 3 of those locations. However, sparrows ate the one here and the one there. I haven't re-sown yet because these actually came up quite late, and so I sowed squash seeds twice in this spot. I sowed, nothing came up. I sowed again, things started coming up. So I'm not sure if what came up was the first round or the second round. So I figured I'd wait another week, and if nothing else germinates, I'll re-sow squash seeds in this area. I am really excited about these tomatoes. They are a little closer together than what would be recommended. You space your tomatoes. However, the method that I use is I grow these up a trellis and I cut off all suckers, which are going to be limbs that grow in the armpits of each branch. And that's going to help keep your tomatoes more productive. I also am going to prune the low branches once these get a little bit bigger to promote airflow between these plants. We live in the Chihuahuan Desert of far western Texas, so we live in a very hot, dry, arid climate. And so I think we can get away with a little closer spacing on our tomatoes because 1, they'll shade each other a little bit better when they're closer, and 2, they get plenty of airflow and there's not that humidity and moisture that is going to cause disease in these tomatoes as much as, say, if you were in a more humid climate. I think it's neat to know which varieties are where as they grow, so that as they're growing I can see what grows better, what grows faster, the different ways that they grow. I can already tell you my Blue Beauty grows very tall and very fast, and it has a darker stem because of those anthocyanins that are in the plant. And then the White Beauty, to me, is the stockiest of all of these plants. It has a really thick stem. It's a lot bushier. It's not growing as tall as quickly, but it's growing a lot more robust leaves. So I'm really impressed with my Snowball White Beauty and my Blue Beauty right now. The Paul Robeson, the second from the end, is also looking really good, but all of these look like they're adjusting really, really well. When I planted these in here, They had yellowing leaves on the bottom of the plants, and they also had purple foliage on the bottoms of their leaves, which indicates a phosphorus deficiency and a nitrogen deficiency. And that's because I had them in seed starting mix when I started them in their little red solo cups. And so by the time they're old enough to get planted out in the garden, they've pretty much used up all of the nutrients in that soil, because seed starting mix doesn't have fertilizer in it. So I wasn't too worried about them. I saw that they had deficiencies, but I knew that once I got them in this rich garden soil, they would have nutrition. And I also, when I planted these, I planted a whole cracked egg underneath each tomato plant, and then I sprinkled worm castings in the soil as well to give them a boost. And so since they've been planted out, their leaves are no longer purple. Their foliage is a lot, just generally greener, and these plants look really healthy, robust, really beautiful plants. We did get a windstorm last night with 50-mile-an-hour winds, and these plants, they do have this 2x4 square fence behind them, but they're not supported otherwise, and they are all standing up nice and tall and really healthy. I planted out this garden about 2 weeks ago, and I was letting them really get established before shooting a garden tour. And I also wanted to be able to show you sprouts from things that I've direct sown, and those things are just now starting to come up. And so we are shooting this garden tour on May 8th of 2021. So we have the tomato, eggplant, and summer squash bed. And before I move on, let me show you my Oyas. I had a video that I posted last week, but I planted these out about 2 weeks ago. These Oyas are terracotta clay pots, and what you do is you fill up them with water. I filled them up this morning. You can see there's still water in there. And the water seeps out of the Oya, and it waters a 3-foot by 3-foot section in the garden bed. So they're doing really well so far. Ooh, look at that. This right here is a dark purple opal basil, volunteer. I had dark purple opal basil in this spot in the garden bed last year. So it looks like we got a little reseeding from that basil that we had last year. That's neat. I know we have a couple of other sprouts in the garden. I'm gonna wait till they show true leaves to know, like, that could be a bell pepper theoretically. I had bell peppers here last year, and as they grow up a little bit, I'll pull out what's weeds and what's volunteers and figure out what to do with those then. I am going to mulch this area, so do expect maybe in the next garden tour this will all be mulched. The reason I haven't mulched yet is because we're still waiting on things to germinate, and I didn't want to shade out and cover up anything that needs to pop out of the soil too heavily, because I wanted to give them the best chance of germinating and the best chance of success at getting up and breaking through that soil. So probably next week we'll have mulch in here, and that'll help prevent so many weeds. We actually don't get a lot of weeds out here. I think it helps that we have this huge brick wall, so we don't get a whole lot of weeds coming through wind. We do get some weeds from birds pooping, bringing some seeds in, and then, you know, just very few weeds, but I can mostly pick those by hand. In this back corner, I have Bachelor Buttons. We have pink and we have purple, and these are beautiful. These have been blooming for about 2 or 3 weeks now. Gorgeous. They all have just so many flowers. The ants like them. And I've been deadheading and pulling off all of the old flowers. Ah, got an ant on me. I've been pulling off all the old flowers, and that keeps the plant more productive in flowering and giving you more flower blossoms if you pull off the old ones. Plants produce flowers because they want to reproduce. So if a flower gets pollinated, then once the petals fall off, it's going to start producing seeds. And when you let the plant ripen the seeds, they think that their job has done, and they might start dying back, and they won't produce as many flowers because they're like, oh, I've already produced offspring, I did my job. So if you deadhead the flowers off of your plants, they will keep producing more flowers because they really want to reproduce. So probably as these get further along in the season and they want to start to die back, I'll leave some flowers on here so that the seeds can ripen. But for now, this early in the season, I am pulling off old dying flowers to spur the plant into trying to produce more flowers. So far it seems to be working really well. Just on the other side of the Bachelor Buttons, I have allegedly poppies. That's what I think these are. I guess it could be a weed. I'm really waiting for it to flower to see if those are poppies or weeds. The foliage doesn't look like the other poppies that I have, so we'll see. I think that'll be a fun surprise. In this pot, I've planted Bachelor Buttons. I also planted 4 different types of poppies. I planted Sissinghurst White, Red Scarlet Peony, Black Swan, and Tangerine Gem. Now I have some Tangerine Gem that are flowering up there by the house, so I know that that's not Tangerine Gem and the foliage is different, but I guess it could be either Red Scarlet Peony, White Sissinghurst, or maybe Black Swan. So I do see some buds developing, waiting for those to bust open, and hopefully it's a poppy, and hopefully it's something really beautiful for us to look at. In this garden bed right here, I planted pole beans. We have rattlesnake pole beans and purple potted pole beans, and they are going to climb up the trellis. I do have chicken wire behind the trellis to keep the chickens from eating all of my pole beans, because they can stick their heads through the 2x4 squares, but they can't stick their heads through the chicken wire. So that will help keep them from eating all of my pole beans this year. And in front of the pole beans, so you can see we have the pole beans. I'm thinking the ones that are a little bluer and with purple stems are the purple potted pole beans. And I'm thinking the ones with green stems are probably the rattlesnake pole beans. I do have a couple that the roly-polies have gotten to and eaten the stems, and they just weren't very successful. Like this one right here, still alive, but the stem is like eaten clear through at the bottom. So that one, I left it because I'd rather them eat that than go find something else to eat. But that's a little frustrating. I'm probably gonna resow a few more beans in here because they've thinned them out for me a little bit. So I have pole beans along the fence, and then I have a row of marigolds, and then I have a row of nasturtiums. And my marigolds, I have 3 different varieties in this bed. We have Jaguar, Bolero, and this one is, I think it's Giant Yellow. And I actually think that's Cracker Jack. So we have 4 varieties of marigolds in this bed. I think that's so neat. When this one came out, the flowers were bright, like burgundy red. And as the flower has matured, it's turned more orange. And these have yellow and red flowers. Now my nasturtiums, this one's an orchid cream. I'm gonna deadhead that flower. It produces cream and burgundy flowers, but this plant also produced a red and burgundy flower. I didn't know they did that color. I thought they were just the cream and red. So I thought that was really, really beautiful. And it has a new flower coming up right there. I also have Alaska Salmon, which is a variegated. These do not have flowers yet on these nasturtiums, but I'm excited. It has like a peachy salmon colored, really pretty like orangey peach colored flower. So we have orchid cream, Alaska Salmon. I planted another orchid cream right here. This one hasn't flowered yet. Another Alaska Salmon, which is that variegated, beautiful leaves. I love the foliage on the Alaska Salmon. And then this one's a papaya cream, and it's neat because the stems are pink. And this one's first flower is yellow and pink, really beautiful. It can also produce pink flowers as well. And then on the end, I have another orchid cream. And this flower is about to die. It's starting to dry up. but really, really beautiful burgundy and cream flowers. This is the third flower that this plant has produced, so it's been fairly productive for having just been transplanted out into the garden. I have a little lemonade cosmos right here. This is a lemonade cosmos that decided to flower today. Look at that beautiful yellow and white tones on that flower. Really, really beautiful. I have fennel in the corner. I put fennel right here because it gets shaded a lot more by this garden bed. And when I had fennel last year, it just couldn't keep up with the heat and died back pretty early on. And then in the corner right here, this is my orange cosmos that I got in a seed swap from Whispering Willow Farm. And this one has several buds, so it's gonna flower pretty soon. It already flowered once and it had a really beautiful orange flower on that cosmos. In the back corner, I do have a Chrysanthemum Melon, which is a really small personal sized white melon. I've never tried it before, so I'm really excited to see how that one grows. This one I plan on growing up the trellis as well. And then in the far corner, I do have a delphinium. I did have two delphiniums. It looks like one got pulled out by a sparrow this morning. It was there this morning and now I only see one. Sparrows have been the enemy this year. Sparrows are the enemy. I really don't know what to do with this garden space to keep the sparrows from pulling out my squash. They've been chopping my melons, like they've been really eating into things. I did have rubber snakes. I still have a rubber snake right here, but I'm cautious with the rubber snakes because I'm afraid it's going to attract hawks. So I've noticed like where I have the snakes, nobody's getting eaten on. Like the sparrows haven't messed with my basil or really my peppers, but they're getting in and eating things. I'm almost hoping that we're gonna have so much green that the sparrows can eat what they want and I'll still have plenty left over. That's kind of been my approach. Last year I got bird netting and I covered the entire garden with bird netting until everything got to a certain size. But I just think that that to me sounds really tedious and it's unsightly, but I don't know, I may pull out the bird netting again because it is pretty ridiculous coming out and finding things pulled out by sparrows regularly. And then most of the time they pull the plant out and then they don't even eat it. They just leave it there and then it dies, and that's not fun. So this is my pepper bed. We have 21 peppers in this garden bed. Peppers you can space a little bit close together because they like to hold hands, meaning like they like it when they're close enough that their leaves can touch. I think that's also good out here because with the high winds, I want them to be close enough that they can kind of support each other with the winds. I do have a couple things staked because of the wind that we get, and I also am going to top some of my taller peppers to make them grow a little bit bushier, but we haven't got that far yet. Let me introduce you to what we have going on in this bed. All right, so I didn't realize till later that as I was editing the footage, I somehow lost the section where I was telling y'all what my pepper varieties are. So we are shooting this in a little bit different time of day, so it's gonna look just a little bit less shaded. This is what it looks like at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of the garden is in full sun this time of year. Man, look at that lemonade cosmos. Just looks gorgeous. All right, so I was going to tell you guys about the variety of peppers that we have in this garden bed. So we have 21 different pepper plants with a few different varieties. I have on the end 3 Cubanelle peppers, and then I have 2 Buena Mulatas. Buena Mulata is a purple pepper that looks really similar to a cayenne pepper. They're long and skinny and they're very spicy. I have 2 Brazilian starfish. The Brazilian starfish have a little bit more rounded leaves. These are going to produce small, squished looking star-shaped peppers that are really, really spicy. We're really excited to try those. I have 1 shishito pepper that's doing pretty good. We have 2 cayenne peppers, one really big cayenne pepper and one that's off to a little bit of a later start, but also still doing good. I have an albino bell pepper. I grew albino bell peppers last year. They're very productive and produce small-sized bell peppers that are creamy white colored. Back here we have 2 lilac bell peppers that are doing really good. This time of the day, my basil's struggling just a little bit in the heat. I did water these this morning, and in the afternoon they'll perk back up a little bit. We have dark purple opal basil and a green basil. I would guess that the green basil's maybe Genovese basil, but the seed packet just said basil. It didn't specify what variety on that green type. I have Peking peppers. I have 2 Peking peppers. The pekins I actually harvested from seeds that were growing here on our property wild. The Peking pepper grows native in our region, and so we've been growing pekins on our property for 4 years now, and I finally decided to save seeds and try to start my seeds. We have just been harvesting from plants that were reproducing on their own in the yard, and so right here is one pekin and our other. The Peking pepper plant produces peppers that are the size of green peas, and they are many times spicier than a jalapeno pepper. I have 3 pepperoncini peppers. The pepperoncini is a pickling pepper, and I want to try pickling this year, so I thought that would be a fun variety to add. And then on the end, I have 3 bushy, really healthy habanadas. Habanadas are habaneros that have been specially developed and selected to have no heat. So you get the sweetness and the fruitiness of a habanero pepper without the heat and spice of a habanero pepper. So we're really excited to try these habanadas this year. And that is my peppers. I can see these are just a little droopier than they were this morning, the time that I was filming the rest of the garden tour, but these guys are survivors, and in about 2 or 3 hours they will be perked right back up and happy. This is the heat of the day they're going through right now, but they're doing pretty good. Over here I have trailing nasturtiums. This is tall trailing, and the trailing nasturtiums can grow up to 10 feet long in a season. So I'm going to train this one to climb up this trellis. I did sow a couple times dragon's egg cucumber into this bed, and I haven't seen it germinate yet. We do have something coming up, but I'm not sure what this is. I don't think it's the dragon's egg cucumber, so I think I'm going to go ahead and start a couple more seeds in here. I do have a spot where the chickens are able to get their heads through, and they're digging a little bit. You can see as far as they can reach. So I'm probably gonna come over here with more chicken wire. I put chicken wire behind this one so they couldn't pull anything through here. And it stops right here. And I'm just gonna have to extend it to the wall probably, because you can see they've been digging, trying to reach for the different plants in this area. I have milkweed right here. Pink Senorita zinnia. This is a beautiful zinnia I'm really excited to grow this year. And then of course we have a couple cosmos. Looks so different this time of day than what I was showing you just a second ago. In these 2 pots, I'm planning on growing peanuts. I am gonna amend the soil here before I plant them though. I haven't had the time to do so yet. However, peanuts really like hot weather, warm weather, and so we've been waiting for the season to just get a little bit warmer, which I think it's about right where we want it to be to plant peanuts, and maybe we'll have some peanuts started for our next garden tour video. Maybe. That's the hope. So let's get back to the rest of our garden tour that we shot early in the morning right now. So all of the fruit that I've sown in this bed, I've actually sown seeds twice, because I sowed seeds over a month ago, still haven't gotten any cucumbers or melons yet. And so then I re-sowed about a week to a week and a half ago, and I'm starting to get some germination. So as things start coming up, it may be a little closer spaced together, but I might end up having to thin later. But I waited like a month and I wasn't getting anything coming up, so I threw more seeds down, and now we're still waiting on some areas. Like the muncher cucumber, haven't seen any cucumbers yet. I may throw even more seeds down just to try to see like, why aren't we getting germination? It may be a seed pack issue. Maybe it just hasn't been warm enough yet. It's just now starting to get warm. Our nighttime temperature last night, it got down to 70 degrees. So we are having warm nights, but our average night is probably in the mid 50s to upper 60s every single night. And our daytime temperatures have been steadily in the mid 80s. I also have some marigolds. And what I did was I interspersed, I put Zinnia, Marigold, Zinnia, Marigold, just to try to get some pollinators in here growing up and add some color to this gardening space. I thought this would help attract pollinators to the melons once they start growing. In this area, I've planted Kajari melon, and this morning when I was watering, I marked it with a little stick. I see what I think is a Kajari melon coming up right here. Yeah, that looks like a melon to me. There's a little melon starting to pop up, a little green thing right there. So I'm hoping we're gonna have a Kajari melon come up. I have probably put 8 seeds into this spot, and that's the first one to come up. I only have 2 seeds left in my seed pack. I only got 10 seeds in my Kajari melon seed pack. So I'm really, really anxious to see Kajari melon start to come up here. Just really anticipating the Kajari melon this year. And if you guys have any experience growing Kajari melons, do they normally take a long time to germinate? Because I planted seeds a month ago and then a week and a half ago, and it looks like we just got one coming up. So maybe I'm just not patient enough. Maybe I planted a little too soon on this. But that really, really made my day this morning, seeing a little melon popping up out of the soil. I have another cosmos right there. This is the pink Senorita Zinnia again. Over here we have Armenian yard-long cucumbers. So what I planted was muncher cucumber, Kajari melon, Armenian yard-long cucumber, and Moon and Stars watermelon. So I have this one for sure is an Armenian yard-long. I have another one right here and another one right here. So I have 3 Armenian yard-longs, and they're in a relatively close space. So I'm gonna kind of see how they develop, and I may end up thinning these out because I did, like I said, really heavily sow this area with seeds, a little closer space, just because I wanted something of all of these varieties, and nothing was coming up. On the end, the Moon and Stars watermelon is doing all right. These actually just popped up about a day ago. So they're still little, but they'll catch up really quick. On the end, I have Balsam. The variety is peppermint stick. So they have really beautiful red and white flowers. And I can already see that they're going to flower soon because there's little growths up on the stem. What's interesting about this variety, or about Balsam in general, is that the flowers grow up like right on the main stem basically, and it's interesting. It looks a little different than other flowers where it might flower right at the top. So it's a really beautiful plant. It's actually an edible. I have never eaten it. I grow it as an ornamental. I think it's really beautiful and great at attracting pollinators. Over here I have another Balsam peppermint stick, same variety. And in this bed we have the Charonte melon. And you can see I sowed this one twice as well. And so I planted, initially I planted 3 melons in the center. One got eaten by a sparrow. I think the second one got eaten by a sparrow, and we had a third one come up. So since I only had one, I reseeded 3 more seeds with the anticipation that that one would probably get eaten. And nope, he's still alive, and we're getting another one. So I may, if nothing comes up over here, I may try to uproot this one very gently. Melons don't like their roots messed with. And I may try to move him over here. But these melons are gonna grow up this trellis. And I'm really excited about the Charonte melon. So we have 3 Charonte melons that have germinated, which is really, really exciting. So that is the tour of my back garden. Very, very excited. We have cucumbers that should come up soon, melons that are starting to come up, watermelons come up, tomatoes, eggplants, summer squash, pole beans, pollinating flowers, peppers, and basil. Really, really, really exciting. I'm going to continue to update you on how I'm liking my Oyas, my underground clay pot irrigation system. I mean, I am really, really optimistic about it. Oyas have been in use for over 2,000 years. There's got to be some substance to that method. So let's go over here and I want to show you something. So we're leaving the back garden. I'm going to take you up to show you what's growing up front, but let me show you what Miss Molly's doing over here. Molly's what I would consider our broodiest chicken. She's not actively broody, but she's very, very maternal. Like she goes around acting like a normal chicken 80% of the time, but then look at this. She's making a little nest. And you see that she's grabbing twigs and throwing them on her back. And she's making this little noise. That's the noise that chickens make when they're talking to their chicks. So she's being super maternal. So I think if we ever get like fertilized eggs and try to hatch out our own chickens, I think we're gonna try putting them under Molly. I think she would make a really good mother. Now she has been like this like forever. This is just her personality. So I feel like normally chickens are broody for a short period of time and then they snap out of it, and she's not actually fully broody. Like she still goes about and acts like a normal chicken. She doesn't sit on the nest all the time, but you just see like she really wants to be maternal. She's not like full-on broody. Are we talking about you, Miss Molly? Are you collecting stuff for your nest? See, chickens, like she's gonna grab twigs, and she's not very good aim, but what she's doing is she's throwing the twigs on her back to carry back to the nest. She just doesn't ever get them on her back. She like misses. Hey girls, Miss Yasha and Miss Dua. Now Yasha went broody once, and she was only broody for a couple weeks, and then she snapped out of it, and she's not at all broody. So Molly's just Molly. She just wants to be a mama. You're a mama, huh? You're a mama at heart. It's almost Mother's Day. Now, unfortunately, the 9 chickens that we have are pretty much going to be the chickens that we plan on having while we live at this property. We're not planning on adding any more chickens until we move to a bigger property, because you've seen our yard. This is the chicken yard. And while I think that we have provided our chickens with a great life and they love this yard, I'm pretty sure that about 10 chickens is the max that you would want to put in a space this size, so that they can still forage and act like chickens and not feel too cramped. They have enough room to go throughout the yard and get away from each other. They have room to scratch around in the shade without really destroying all of the plants. So we have 9 chickens, but I wouldn't add any more to what we have, because I feel like 9 chickens is a good amount for this size property. I'm trying not to step on chickens. Hey girls, the chickens are underfoot. Hey girls. Come on guys, let's go up and check out the front garden and the dog yard. All right, so this is right up against the back of our house, and we have a garden bed that is 18 inches deep by 16 feet long, and we have herbs, various pollinators, and most importantly, winter squash. In the front we have yarrow. This is a white yarrow, and it's growing so good. This is my yarrow's 2nd year. The first year it was purely in a vegetative state where all it had was like these fern-like looking leaves, and then it went through a winter with us, and in the spring it decided to flower for the first time. These flowers are so long-lived. I cut some of these flowers to take to work to put on my desk, and the flowers are like, they would last as cut flowers for like a week and a half before they died. That's the longest like cut flowers that I've ever seen fresh cut. And they smell so beautiful. This yarrow smells just like raw honey to me. I'm always coming over and sticking my face in these flowers, just smelling them. They smell so good. I can't stop smelling them. Right next to the yarrow, I have a borage that I planted. This is white borage. It has white flowers. Most borage has blue flowers, so I'm really excited about this variety. We have salvia blue sage, which is flowering really nicely. This is the second year on my salvia blue sage as well. It is a perennial. In the wintertime, I did have to cut it down to the ground and remove all of the dead vegetation, and it sprouted from the ground back in the spring and it's come back. In the back, I have a Lady Godiva winter squash. It's like a type of pumpkin. Over here we have the Seminal Pumpkin. I may have to thin these out just a little bit, but I'm really excited about the Seminal Pumpkin. It's also called the Everglades Pumpkin, and it's native to that region, really well suited to hot climates, which, I mean, we're in a hot climate, so I'm very, very excited to see how the Seminal Pumpkin performs. I have some Bachelor Buttons right here, more Bachelor Buttons about to flower. And then I have Charonte Pumpkin, which is a blue-gray colored pumpkin. More white borage, more marigolds. Got a little purple basil hiding back there. Marigolds, more Charontes. And then this is my Tangerine Gem Poppy. I was on a waiting list for like a 1.5 to 2 years for these poppies. I was so excited when I finally got them. And these I just kind of broadcasted throughout the bed. There's a couple areas where I have some small ones down there. And they decided to finally flower, and I think they're breathtaking. Now they're only open in the mornings and the evenings. In the heat of the day they do close up, but they are gorgeous. These poppies were from a high desert, and we live in a high desert, so I thought they would do pretty good here. And they are the first poppies to flower. These make me happy. I come over and look at them every morning because I know they weren't gonna last very long. So that is the garden bed right here. Next to the garden bed, I have my greenhouse where I started all my seedlings this year. And in here, I am hanging to dry out my broccoli plant. So this broccoli plant is full of beans, little bean-like pods. And what we're doing is we're drying out these pods so that we can harvest the seeds. We waited until the entire plant died back, and then we decided to pull it out. And I'm gonna hang this for at least 2 weeks, and I'll keep checking on it, waiting for those pods to dry up. And then we'll pop them open and harvest the seeds for the fall this year so that we can regrow more of this purple early sprouting broccoli. Across the dog yard, I have this area right here. I did have to end up putting up a little fence. This is temporary. I am waiting until everything gets just big enough because Dyson decided that he wanted to use my raised garden beds as a dog bed. Didn't you, buddy? Didn't you? He's so guilty. And in the moment, I caught him in the moment and I scolded him, and he just seems to keep getting in the beds, and he steps in them and tramples things. He laid on my okra. Yes, you did. So I haven't been able to break him of that habit. But he's really respectful of boundaries. Like, he doesn't go in here because he sees a little white fence. I decided to put up a temporary little fence to keep him out because he was laying in this one. He was climbing all in that one and laying on everything. So my okra are a little bit behind. They are still alive, but they did have to recover because Dyson came in and squashed all of them. I came out here and they were all flat on the ground, really sad looking, and they're starting to perk up and come back. I'm thinking we're gonna be okay here. But I did go ahead and put up a little temporary fence until the plants get big enough that they'll be a deterrent to keep him out of the beds. In the middle, I have white alyssum. We also have a purpley pink alyssum, and then okra. There's a calendula in the corner over there. And they're doing okay. I think they're gonna be okay. Right next to our okra and alyssum bed, I have bush beans and more tomatoes. I am gonna remove these. You know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna remove this PEX. This PEX was just a visual guide so that I wouldn't disturb my beans as I planted my tomatoes. But since everything's planted out, it's as good a time as any. Get rid of those ugly poles. So in the front, we have butter wax bush beans. I also have red swan bush beans. These are doing really good. We have Dr. Witchy's tomato, or Dr. Weish's, however you want to say it. Another Paul Robeson. We have Amish paste tomato and Chihuahuan Desert Star. I have one amaranth that the sparrows really like. And the amaranth I'm planning on staking to the end of this to help it grow up as it grows, help give it some support. I have one more white borage right here. Around this side, we have a white currant tomato, very robust, really good looking tomato. I have Brad's Atomic grape tomato, looking really, really good. These were gifted, the Brad's Atomic was gifted to me from one of my professors up at Sul Ross. And he also gifted me the Amish paste, the Costaludo Fiorentino, and the Chihuahuan Desert Star. Over here, this one is the orange peach tomato, which is an orange tomato that has a skin that's fuzzy like a peach. And then over here is the spoon tomato, which is like a red currant tomato, the smallest tomato I think there is that I know of, unless someone knows of something smaller. You can fit 10 tomatoes in a teaspoon. That's how small the tomatoes are on this plant. So I'm really, really excited. This bed, I spaced the tomatoes a little closer together. I am planning on feeding the tomatoes more and pruning the tomatoes more over here. Feeding them more fertilizer and pruning them a little bit more heavily. And I'm thinking we can get away with having 8 tomatoes in this space in the climate that we are in. And I'm really, really excited to try all of this variety. I did purposefully put my smaller tomatoes over here because I knew that they were going to be closer spaced together. So I have more cherries over here, and I have more of the big slicers over there, with obviously the exception of the Paul Robeson and the Dr. Weish's, which are huge tomatoes. But these plants were off to a later start. My Dr. Weish's, or Dr. Witchy's, it didn't germinate for a full month after everybody else germinated, so he's a little bit smaller, but he produces huge tomatoes. So I put him on the end, hoping he would kind of have a little bit more space than everybody else packed up in the middle. In this area, I have my mung beans, which are really cute little beans. And this is more red swan bush. And then I had lima beans, which don't seem to be germinating as well, but some of them are coming up. I do plan on planting another peanut in this pot. This is where I had my broccoli. We have a Swiss chard from the winter or last fall that's still hanging in there. Really a good distraction for the sparrows to keep them away from some of my other plants. The sparrows like to munch on him. And then this is my arched cattle panel trellis. I hope that this will be completely covered in green before the season's over. That is the goal here. So I did have a really beautiful red Malabar spinach right here, and the birds ate him. So I re-sowed another seed in this spot, and when that comes up, I will cover my red Malabar spinach. I am desperate to grow one of those this year. So I'm gonna definitely protect him more than I've protected anything else, because I want him to grow up in this space. I did go ahead and plant out some more trailing nasturtiums, which will climb up this trellis just to really fill it in with green. I have interspaced Yeti nasturtiums, which are a white, creamy white flower, as well as tall trailing, which is a variety of mixed colors. We have one pea plant left who's hanging in there really good. Hasn't produced any peas yet. It may be too hot for him too, but I decided to leave one in there just to see what he wants to do. Got a couple tiny miniature carrots over here. I'm gonna probably pull these out really soon, even if they're not developed, feed them to the chickens so that everything else has more room to grow. And we do have a couple tiger melons here and here. These actually were from the bed across I'm about to show you, and I sowed them twice, just like all my other melons that didn't want to sprout, and then they all germinated, all of my tiger melons. So I had about twice as many melons as I needed on the other side. So I took a chance, since my red Malabar spinach didn't germinate well and then got eaten by the birds, that I decided to transplant my melons over here to let them fill out this space instead. Over here we have again the Yeti and tall trailing nasturtiums. We do have one flower on the Yeti. This is a several day old flower, so it's starting to die back, but it'll produce many flowers throughout its lifetime on this plant. We have some noodle beans underneath of these that I hope will grow up nicely. I planted 6 noodle beans and I have 4 that have germinated so far, so that's really, really exciting. And then you can see the tiger melons over here are doing really good. Off to a good start. Oh, happy birthday, little tiger melon. Look at you, he wasn't here yesterday. Very good. Happy birthday, tiger melon. Tiger melon is another personal sized melon for like one person. They're baseball sized fruit, really gorgeous melon. I have an artichoke from the winter, blooming on its first year. I'm almost ready to harvest that first flower. Another artichoke plant that's doing great. Carrot that's flowering. Bachelor Buttons about to flower. These are carrots, looking really good. They're starting to get big. We have more flowers and herbs planted all around here. We have safflower, borage, calendula, zinnia, basil. I'm gonna pull a carrot for y'all. Look at that. Oh, I got a couple by accident. They're getting pretty good, and these are the best tasting carrots I've ever had. I'm gonna take these in, wash them, and eat them. And then we have the green stalk. I have the green stalk planted out with flowers and herbs, a couple strawberries, and some leftover tomatoes. I tried to sell my extra tomatoes, and it was really hard to sell them locally, so I ended up taking a few and planting them in the green stalk. I think they're gonna be a little too big for the green stalk, but I've seen it happen with other people using indeterminate tomatoes and getting fruit out of green stalks. So I'm gonna try, and I'm really excited. I will keep you updated on what all's in here on our next video, as well as how everything is adjusting and doing. Well, my battery is about to die, and we just got family in town for Mother's Day, so I'm gonna call it on this garden tour, and stay tuned. I'm gonna keep you guys updated on how everything in the garden's growing. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to see everything up to date that's going on here at Reach and Reverie. Oh my goodness, look at this. I just finished my afternoon update on our garden tour. I was telling y'all about the peppers. And we have an egg right here in this nest. Look at that. This is Molly's egg. This is what Molly's eggs look like. Molly's that cream colored chicken I was showing you earlier. You guys, you're supposed to lay in the chicken coop. I don't know why I'm yelling at y'all. Y'all aren't the ones who did it. And Pip was over there standing on the egg. Oh, guys, there's an egg over here. Who's gonna sit on it? Let's see. There's Miss Mary. Where's your sister Molly at? She's in here eating food.